Hey, and welcome to Tigers Talk Ethics. My name is Brittany Harrison, and I'll be your host for this episode. Today, we're discussing a topic that's on the forefront of everyone's minds, whether or not to legalize marijuana. I have four gentlemen up here with me, ready and willing to argue their points. On my right, I have the four team, those who want legalization of marijuana in all states. And on my left, the against team, those who think that marijuana is best left as an illegal drug. We're going to start by introducing who will be arguing their sides today. If you'd like to start, sir.
My name is Magnus Charters. I'm from Maryland.
I'm Jay Bowen from Columbia, South Carolina.
I'm Drew Middlebrooks from Spartanburg, South Carolina.
I'm Elliot Lane from Chevy Chase, Maryland.
Well, gentlemen, let's get right down to it. Why should marijuana be legal? We'll start with Jay.
If marijuana is legal, it would give the government a good chance to regulate it and have more taxes, which means more income for the economy, and they'd be able to keep tabs on it a lot more instead of just it being out and people trying to sneak around with it.
I'd say that'd certainly help our debt.
Indeed.
Magnus, what do you think is the best reason we should legalize marijuana?
Well, in addition to Jay's point, I think that legalizing marijuana would make no more marijuana arrests. The prisons, there'll be less prisoners, and
More room for violent criminals.
exactly, and save money on prison system too.
What do you guys think about that?
Well, if marijuana was legalized, I think that our society would fall greatly. It leads to laziness and the lack of strive to achieve achievements.
And also, if marijuana was legalized, there would be more high drivers on the roads. There are tons of drunk driving accidents already, and this would just increase the number of impaired drivers on the roads. More people would die in traffic accidents.
And there'd definitely be longer fast food lines, we can say that. But gentlemen for the fourth side, what do you think about the claim that if we legalize marijuana, we have a better chance of having accidents? Do you think marijuana impairs your ability to concentrate, or do you think that marijuana is actually an enhancing type drug?
Yeah, I think marijuana does not affect your ability to drive. I actually read about a study which shows that driving high is actually better because you're more aware of what's going around and you concentrate harder and not get in an accident.
That's a pretty good point. Anything to say about that?
Well, when someone is high on marijuana, they're more likely to be distracted by other things. Like if they get a text, they're going to check it. They're not going to be thinking oh, I should pay attention to the road.
So definitely more focused, but maybe focused on the wrong things.
Right.
Gotcha. Well, let's move on and discuss the claim that I've heard a lot about the legalization of marijuana is that marijuana shouldn't be legal because it's supposedly a gateway drug. Now, I won't argue for or against. I'll let you gentlemen do that. But is marijuana a gateway drug? If not, is there studies that show it's a gateway drug? What do we say about that? We'll start with the against side.
Well, I think that if marijuana was legalized, it'd be a lot easier for the younger children to get their hands on it. It'd be like them getting tobacco products nowadays if you had to be 18 to buy marijuana. And I feel like them starting to smoke an illegal drug at such a young age would lead them into other drugs much sooner, or even possibly that they'd never even have experimented with had they never gotten high before. They may need a better high or a stronger high.
So would you say that if we don't legalize marijuana, then there's no chance that these children will experience harder drugs?
No, I'm just saying that if we do legalize it, that it's going to be a greater chance for them to, they're going to get experience with drug use, which is illegal at this point. So if they're going to get a drug that we frown upon today, and now they're looking at harder drugs, cocaine, heroin later down in their life, if they become a strong user of marijuana.
What do you guys have to say about that? Our
I'm
children are at risk.
going to have to disagree with you because I think if you legalize marijuana, it's going to be harder for children under 18 to get drugs because since alcohol is legal, it's much easier for teens to get marijuana than alcohol or cigarettes because it's regulated by someone, whereas no one's regulating underage kids to buy marijuana.
So is alcohol the bigger criminal, guys? Should we be more worried about reducing the amount of alcohol in society, or is marijuana even that big of a deal?
No, I think if we legalize marijuana, there'll be more people using marijuana, both kids and adults. And I think those people who buy alcohol for kids will start buying weed for kids. And no one goes out and starts doing cocaine or heroin out of the blue. Like, most people would start with marijuana and then move on to bigger drugs. And more people start using marijuana, more people will start using cocaine and heroin too.
I guess you could definitely make a case for that. Let's hit back on the topic of children, since that's obviously a big concern in America. I mean, we can all, I guess, pretty much agree that marijuana tends to sedate you, tends to make you a little bit more lazy. Would we agree on that? Do we think that this is a problem if we legalize it for, let's say, I mean, also we have to decide how low do we legalize it for? I mean, obviously you're not going to have, let's make it legal for 4-year-olds to go out and buy marijuana. So obviously we'll need an age just like we have for drinking. But if we make the age low enough, should we have concern that it'll affect a child's performance in school? Should we look for, lower college admissions rates? Because people are just too lazy to go to college. They'd rather just sit home and smoke pot.
If that's the case, I think you'd have to leave it up to the parents to kind of, guide the child. They can kind of enforce things, just how parents nowadays are, making sure their kids don't drink and screw up like that. They do the same with weed.
What if our parents are high?
Well, in that case, you'd have fun with your parents.
We have bigger problems, I guess, at that point. So they say that it's the parent's job to regulate, not the government's job to necessarily regulate this for children. But, I mean, should we even be talking about children? Should children be even in this equation?
Well,
or should we set it at 18?
The way I look at it is, if we're allowed to smoke cigarettes at 18 and tobacco has no real mind-altering effect, weed definitely alters your mind, and that's just like alcohol. So if it even is going to be legal, there's no way it should be below 21 at all. And also how strongly we're promoting schools and like all the effort we put into higher education. If we're going to start allowing children to start smoking weed, let them like fail and not achieve what they're trying to like strive for, higher education, like better jobs in America. I feel like that's just like counteracting like everything that we put into college, universities, and expanding and all the scholarships and grants that are put out there.
So what do you say the idea that we make it legal at 25 or 27? At that point, you'd say most people have already gone through most of their schooling, if not all of it, maybe even grad school at that point. Is it okay then to make marijuana legal after we've already ensured that they've had an education?
Well, I mean, at that point, if you're going to put it as late as 25, I mean, that's just too late. I mean, there's really no good age to legalize it at. That's the problem. That, I mean, if you're legalizing it at 25, what's to stop you if you're 21? I mean, you can do your own thing. You're probably living on your own. I mean...
So we're still going to have offenders to the law even if we make it at 25?
I mean, we can make it at 30 and it's always going to be offended. I mean, I feel like at that point it's just going to be, like, unwatched and unenforced, if anything.
I can tend to agree with that point, I guess. I guess I wonder if we legalize this, gentlemen, we'll go with you actually. If we legalize this, where do we stop at legalizing? If we legalize marijuana, back we already had prohibition, the prohibition days where alcohol was illegal, and now it's legal. Now we're looking at to legalize marijuana. If this becomes legal, what do we say about 50 years down the road? What are we going to try to legalize then? Is it a doorway we don't want open?
Well, I think when it comes to much harder drugs, which studies have shown they're much, much more harmful than marijuana, then you have to illegalize them. But I personally don't think it's the government's right to tell you what you do with your own body. When the studies show that it's really not that harmful, then I don't think it's the government's right to impose their will on someone.
At the same time, there's also is like weed and actually does help with medical problems. It can like relieve stress for those who like need to gain weight. Like, I mean, it sounds stupid, but it actually it'll help you gain weight back, so it'll make you hungry. Whereas these other drugs have no like benefits whatsoever to someone besides just getting high, and these other drugs are also a lot worse for you, and it'll just tear apart your body.
So because it's medically beneficial, you think that's a strong point of why we should legalize it?
I believe so.
So we should, essentially, I mean, that's essentially what they're doing in California right now. They have the medical marijuana, and you get issued a medical marijuana license, and then you can smoke for medical purposes. Do we then, if that becomes a federal thing, do we then have to, I guess, monitor which doctors are giving out, medical cards to anybody? I mean, that's a problem they're having in California now is can everybody get a medical card? I mean, can't you just say, I'm stressed out, I have depression, I just want to smoke pot? Is that a problem? Should we be worried about that then?
I don't think so. I think marijuana is just like the universal drug, how it's beneficial in a lot of ways. It helps depression, it helps nausea, so it helps really a lot of things. So that's why it's so easy to give out medical cards, because the vast amount of how it cures everything, basically.
It's the wonder drug.
Exactly.
Marijuana. Drew, tell me, if we legalize marijuana now, where do we stop? Where does it end? Where do we draw the line?
I'd really have to say there's no good place to draw the line. The line would have to be no legalization at all. I mean, if you're going to legalize it, I feel like if you made it at 18, just like smoking cigarettes, that it'd be too easy for kids to get handled. But at the same time, if you're smoking it, it's a mind-altering drug. I don't think at 18 we're fully developed enough. So if you look at 21, that's the same age as alcohol. But at the same time, people are still learning. They're going through school. I feel like that's like almost like your peak of your achievements. So if you start smoking then, you're so close. And then if you do have like a bad experience, you get too like carried away in smoking, you put all those years and now you're just gonna fail pretty much. It's gonna take away from all your effort. And then at that point, after 21, you're pretty much an adult. You live on your own. Most people do. So at that point, you're really not keeping anyone from doing anything if you make it later on down the road, like 25, 28.
So should it be my choice then at 25 if I want to smoke or not? And in that case, doesn't it interfere with my job? Why do I stop achieving at college or at grad school?
That makes me think, if we do legalize marijuana in the business place, is it going to be their right to give you drug tests? Because, I mean, it's something you can legally do, but at the same time, if you're just going to come to work high every day, I mean, why would they want to hire you if you're just you're going to be pretty much worthless sitting there taking up space? I mean, so should they be able to drug test you? I mean,
what do you think, guys? Would it affect job performance? What do we do about jobs then at that point? If everybody's high, I mean, are you going to feel safe if your nurse is high? If your doctor's doing surgery and he's high?
I mean, in accordance to that, like along with education, I feel like, if it was legalized, no one's going to force you to smoke. You won't be going to like your job high. You won't be going to school high, like unless you want to. No one's making you do those things. So like, therefore, in regards to education, if you go to school high, then you suffer the results of your poor performance. Whereas in the jobs, like, yeah, I understand like some jobs maybe not so much, but I would understand like, maybe having times where like you can't smoke or, like you're not supposed to smoke because of like certain things that you'll be doing. But at that point, that would be up to the corporation to regulate it, So like if you wanted to work for that job, then it would be up to you whether you wanted to smoke or not if they said no smoking.
I mean, that's a good point, guys. I mean, just because we're legalizing marijuana doesn't mean we're eliminating responsibility. If you're going to be an adult and you can't perform while smoking marijuana, then don't smoke it.
But is it going to be the employer's discretion as to whether, like, let's say, this is a what-if statement, so it could have possibly never happened, but you're out and you have some kind of accident late at night, and the doctor on call is high at the moment, and he gets called in to do some risky surgery, you're in critical condition. I mean, it's been his choice to smoke, and he's high, and he's the doctor on call. So would you feel comfortable knowing that the guy out there that's about to come operate on you is high? I mean, could you do something life-saving?
I'm going to have to disagree. Just because alcohol is legal doesn't mean everyone gets drunk at work. I mean, just because marijuana is going to be, if it is legal, it doesn't mean everyone's going to be high at work. Even if it is their choice, they're probably not going to do that.
Right, but also a lot of people don't drink and drive by choice because they know it's not a good idea. But a lot of people smoke and drive because they think that it doesn't alter your mind as much. But really, I mean, it's been proven to have mind-altering effects. Like, it definitely distracts you.
It definitely affects your motor skills.
Right, people in the workplace might think that it's not affecting them, but it really is.
I mean, maybe it only takes one to ruin it for everybody, DUIs, I mean, not everybody drinks. Not everybody drinks and drives. But, we obviously have a problem in this country with DUIs as well. So could that same effect happen with marijuana? Or do you think people are responsible enough in America to deal with the legalization of marijuana? I mean, look at Amsterdam. Amsterdam's doing pretty okay with it. I mean, considering they're a completely different country, but maybe that could work here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a completely different situation in Amsterdam. I mean, it's been legal for a while. It's not.
So the hype's kind of died down.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of like a pot smoking theme park, to whereas we tried to turn all of America into like a legal area. I just don't think it'd work on the big scale. Like, I feel like they have a lot more. They have that tourism that drives their country economically. But if we were to have that, I mean, nobody's gonna be like, all right, well, let's move to America so we can smoke marijuana. I mean, most people do it if they want to do it here. So, I mean, Amsterdam's just kind of like that one centralized place that took that monopoly. So if we try and do it here, it's not really going to work for us. And I just feel like it's going to be a lot more like negative, like not work how we expect it to.
Legalizing weed wouldn't be to make America a tourist spot, though. Like that's not the argument. Like legalizing weed, like it may or may not bring more people like into the country. You know, like you're saying how it got like bigger, like like tourists came, like you said, people don't want to move to America like just to smoke weed and stuff. I mean, we have tons of people flooding in all the time, like getting jobs and stuff. So I mean, like smoking weed, not smoking weed, obviously they don't care already since we can't. So if they can smoke weed, then it'd just be like one more plus to them.
I agree with what you're saying, but I'm just saying as far as Amsterdam goes, like they're well off and like they have legalization and they're well off right now. I just don't think that if we try and use that as an example as to why we should do it, I just don't think it's going to work out for us that way.
So we just can't compare.
Like I don't think it's
like apples and oranges.
Correct. I don't think it's a fair comparison.
Pretty good. I mean, pretty good, guys. Is Amsterdam the new America? Could we make marijuana work for us? I mean, or is there just too many? Is there just too many flaws in the process? And I mean, like you said, I want to bring up a point. You said, we just don't know how it's going to work. It's kind of uncharted territory for us. We don't really know where marijuana is going to go. Should we use a state and see how it goes? And if it goes bad, we say, whoops.
Well, I think they're currently doing that right now in California. And I think they're kind of getting a lot of the hype that Amsterdam has. Like, a lot of people see that medical marijuana card thing there where they can go buy marijuana medically. And I think that's already being abused at this point. Like what do you have to have? Like, oh, I have nausea. Like, you can't really test for that. Like, I have migraines or I'm stressed out. I mean, everyone's stressed out.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people that I know who've been to California say that everyone there has medical cards just for recreational use. Like, the doctors abuse it because they get money, like, when they give out cards.
So if everybody's got one, why not make it legal? Skip the whole process. Stop the cards and, we'll get doctors concentrating on things that they should be concentrating on, curing things, helping people who are genuinely sick. I mean, if we made it legal, would that solve the problem? No more need for cards.
Right, but there are still these other problems of increased numbers of impaired drivers, it being a gateway drug. After it's legal, then right now it's kind of like the forbidden fruit. Like, a lot of people smoke weed because it's illegal and it doesn't harm you like that much. But if we made it legal, then, I mean, what's next? Like, people would move on to cocaine just because they can't do it, or heroin,
Boys?
I mean, I think regardless, like, obviously it's still going on right now while it's still illegal. And when y'all keep talking about, like, impaired drivers and everything, it makes it sound like, like everyone is smoking and driving. Like, people drink and drive too. Like, I mean, it's not, like, people do it. Like, not the majority maybe, but I feel like marijuana would be the same exact way. Like some people will smoke and drive, yeah, but I mean, like, it's not like it's not mandatory once you get in your car to like light up a bowl or something.
Right. I mean, there's always going to be people who can handle it, like are responsible enough to handle it, but it's just increased numbers of impaired drivers. Like, not everyone's going to smoke and drive, just like not everyone drinks and drives, but just more people will, because more people will be smoking weed. Because there won't be that deterrent where if I'm caught smoking weed, I could go to jail. Like, now you can smoke weed whenever you want. Like, more people are going to do it.
And I feel like another big issue with that is if you are drinking and driving, you get pulled over, you get breathalyzed, they can instantly tell whether you've been drinking or not. Right now, there's no way to tell, like, short of taking a drug test on the side of the road, which is saying you've been smoking for, 30 days in the past. I mean, like, if you take a urine test or whatever, there's no instant way for them to give you a field sobriety test and be like, yes, you're high, or no, you're not. I mean...
But is driving high really that bad? I mean, there'll be much more slower drivers on the road and just waiting at stop signs, waiting for them to turn green.
Well, I mean, then I feel like everything we put into traffic system, I mean, like, if we're gonna have like guys like holding up highways going like 25 miles an hour into 60, like not knowing like what they're doing, or maybe knowing what they're doing, just like not being in full connection with reality. I mean, I feel like that's gonna alter, like slow transportation down, clog up areas.
They may be slower, but it's because generally they're being cautious. Whereas when people are drunk and driving, they just don't care at anything. Like they speed, they swerve, they don't know what's going on. At least like when people smoke and drive, they're being cautious enough to know that they should go slow as to not like mess up anything, and like, you know, like they're not being reckless.
So if you're on a one-way road and you're behind a guy going 25, like, and he's high, is it your problem that you're stuck going late to work or whatever, and he's just going 25, like taking his time, high, doing his thing?
I mean, the man could easily just be going 25 by his own. Like, there are people who just generally drive slow. You don't know if he's,
Well,
like,
what's to say that these, marijuana's only driving slow now because they want to ensure that they don't get caught, because it is illegal? I mean, who's to say that if we legalize marijuana, people won't start driving faster? Because it doesn't matter if you get caught. I can smoke. I mean, are we guaranteeing that people are still going to drive slow when it becomes, if it becomes a legal drug?
not necessarily, but I feel like at some point, I mean, like when the marijuana kind of, like whereas alcohol like excites you and stuff, like you kind of like lose sense of yourself and stuff, and therefore like when the marijuana just kind of, causes like euphoria, like makes you happy and stuff, like you don't really get that sense of like recklessness, like you're kind of content. So I feel like maybe you might not be driving like, exceptionally slow, but at the same time you won't be driving crazy either because you're just content with what you're doing. You're not going to like go over the speed limit. You're not going to be making, I mean, granted you could make bad decisions, but it's not going to be like you're extremely drunk and, just trying to show off or, just do this because you don't think of the consequences.
Well, I mean, I guess my bottom line is that if you're high, you're not in your correct state of mind. So I wouldn't feel comfortable around someone that, even if they're driving 25 miles an hour, being more cautious. I don't feel like they're sober. I don't want to like endanger myself, endanger other people. I mean, I just don't feel like it's a safe situation.
Well, let's say worst case scenario for you guys, marijuana becomes legal. What do you guys think needs to be thought about and put into law to at least protect, the citizens of this country? Since you guys are worried, obviously, that marijuana is going to do some harmful things, what do we need to look at if marijuana does become legal? Should we make it against the law to not be able to smoke and drive? Should you not be allowed? Is that just another distraction on the road? What kind of things should we look out for? I mean, obviously you just can't say, okay, everybody go get it. It's free for all. Let's just everybody be stoned.
Right. I mean, and that's the problem with legalizing it, is that there's no way to test for like drivers who are high. Like it definitely should be legal to smoke and drive, but like there's
Unless
no way
you catch
to
them, how do you know?
Yeah, I mean, but even if you get pulled over, like there's no sobriety test for smoking weed, so it's just not going to work out. Like people can drive high and there's no risk, because I mean they can have weed, they just can't be high, but they're not going to be able to tell.
I mean, I feel like it should be along the same lines that we regulate alcohol in motor vehicles. That one, you shouldn't be high, like you shouldn't be drunk, and two, there should be like a no open container law. Like, I mean, I guess if we're going to legalize it, there's going to be packaging it comes in. So in the car, it should be still in that same packaging, not open, not lit.
So maybe you would recommend smoking, let's say worst case scenario, if it is legal, smoking in the privacy of your own home?
And staying off the roads.
I mean, what if I don't want to be high and I don't like smoking weed, but you do? Is it your right to be able to smoke it around me? Is that like a cigarettes thing that we're dealing with right now? I mean,
I feel like we're going to encounter a lot of the same problems.
Should be marijuana safe smoking places? A little shelter in the airport where you can huddle with your other smoker buddies. And
I do feel like if we legalize marijuana, it's going to bring we're going to go through the same problems that we've been going through with alcohol, like everything we've been talking about with driving. And then, I mean, if you don't like this, like, I don't think I'd want to be around people that are smoking, like walking down the street. I mean, like getting high as they walk by me. So, I mean, they need to do that in their own place. I mean, I know we allow cigarettes out in public, but there's a lot of like push towards like smoke-free restaurants. And like, I guess you could have your own, like they do in Amsterdam, they have their own like little cafes where you can go in and buy your joints and do your thing. But I mean, you're doing that in a place specifically certified for that action. So,
I mean, could you guys live with legalization with that many rules? Could you, is your point just make it legal and make it happen, or could you live with that many rules?
I think I could definitely live with those rules. And talking about regulation, I think the reason that the government is not legalizing marijuana is because they can't regulate it. You can just grow marijuana in your backyard, whereas alcohol and tobacco, the government can regulate it and make money off that. So I think it's also
So if we were
a
to
financial situation.
legalize marijuana, could I grow my own like breed of marijuana in my house?
Yes.
So, but what's stopping me from, if the government's charging like $20 a pack of 20 joints, what's stopping me from growing it and selling it cheaper? And now we're still in the same problem, except it's just legal. Like, what am I going to look at fine-wise for growing and distribution of marijuana?
I mean, I think he's on to a good point, but let's take a quick break. We're going to see what some people on the street have to say, some Clemson students and fellow peers of ours. Let's take a break and see what they have to say, and we'll get back to this topic.
Yes. It would just become like any other product that you can sell and make money off of. So.
Yes. Great. I feel like legalization and regulation and taxation of marijuana would definitely benefit society, as opposed to spending undue amounts of money waging a drug war against a drug that's honestly less harmful than cigarettes.
I think it definitely could be beneficial. I mean, it could kind of be like a cash crop. We could grow it and import it and export it. I think it could potentially be a pretty big money maker.
Any societal costs.
Yes. If you think about marijuana as like a $1 billion industry, everyone, if they could, would smoke. It's like a stress releaser for people, especially if it was legal.
Welcome back. Lay down your bongs, ladies and gentlemen, because we have a lot more to talk about. We actually have a new guest on our show, here to give us his opinion on whether legalization of marijuana is a good idea or a bad idea.
I'm Adam Hackenberg, and I believe it would be a great idea.
So you're all for it?
Yeah. I mean...
You say pass the joints.
Yeah. Taxation of marijuana and also the war on drugs, which is a complete failure. And, yeah, pretty much.
Well, I like where you went with that. That's a topic we didn't talk about, guys, the war on drugs. Would you guys say it was a failure?
Well, I mean, like anything else, we're not going to be able to perfect it. You know, like immigration, we're not perfecting that. Like, what are we going to do? Build the Great Wall of China, like right there on the border? We can't do that. I don't think the point of the war on drugs is to completely eliminate it. I don't think that's plausible. That's not what we're aiming for. But I think more the point on war on drugs is to, right now, is to keep it away from like the youth, keep it away from people that don't need it. I mean, we're not going to be able to perfect it. I don't think legalizing it's really going to do anything but just pretend like there was never a war and just let everything go crazy.
So you'd say, I mean, the war on drugs, let's just say, is essentially about control, right? The government's attempt to control the drugs that they don't feel should be on the street. Legalization may have a slight lapse in control. Would you guys say that's a problem? And obviously our government likes to control, a good bit of what goes on in this country. Would you say that the fact that, we can't control when people smoke when they drive, we can't control the fact that people may grow it in their backyards, we can't control these small but pretty meaningful factors, would you say that by legalizing it, we're therefore letting go of a little bit of control that you think this country needs?
I think we'd be letting go of control but giving freedom. The freedom to choose what you want to do and to smoke if you want to. And if you enjoy that way of thinking, then, why not?
So you guys are freedom haters. Is that it?
I guess. I mean,
Freedom
I don't look
haters.
at it as taking away someone's freedom. I mean, if you're smoking, like right now you can smoke, it's illegal, but people do it anyways. It's not really their freedom to do it, but they're going to choose to do it. But at the same time, if we legalize it, I feel like it's going to take away from a lot of other people's safety if we try and give those other people their freedom.
It's a safety over freedom. I mean, like, let's take, for example, you can't say bomb in an airport. It's a freedom. Should we be allowed to say bomb in an airport? Maybe not. Same thing applies for marijuana. I mean, which is more important? The freedom of some or the rights of all?
Well, the rights of all, of course, but I don't think that driving while impaired will, of course. I mean, you have slower reaction times, but if we make it illegal to drive while high, I mean, I don't think.
But how do you regulate that? Like, there's, like we were talking about, there's no way to be able to tell if someone's high while they're driving. Like, there's no effective method.
They were talking about the throat swabs earlier. And,
But I mean,
Red eyes.
yeah, I'm sure.
Maybe you
I
have
mean,
bad
how do cops
allergies.
pull over for it now? Let's be honest. Like, I mean, if you get pulled over for it now, there is no test. I mean, we've said point blank, there is no test that we can, without a doubt, prove that you are currently smoking marijuana. People get pulled over for it now.
And usually
It's probable cause.
they're let off unless they have possession or paraphernalia, which, I mean, they could be high as a kite and not have anything on them, be clean and get away, drive off down the road and continue endangering other people's lives. I mean, I don't think that's something we need to look at. I mean, that's just absurd to think about that, like that we're going to have people endangering other people's lives unnecessarily.
And hypothetically, of course. Because, I mean, we've been saying, that smoking weed while driving will endanger people's lives. But will it really? Will it definitely? I mean, we obviously can't say definitely because we don't know for a fact. But will it become, I mean, maybe if we legalize marijuana, it'll become so commonplace. So, just like smoking a cigarette while driving down the road. It'll be so nonchalant and who cares about it that maybe it won't have such a big deal. I'm sure, I mean, couldn't you say that cigarettes distract drivers?
Well, yes, but something that what you just said made me think, if we legalize marijuana and it becomes like smoking a cigarette to where the point of smoking now is to get high, but if it's legal, you can buy it in abundance, you can smoke it, and to where it turns into a cigarette, there's no real point in smoking it. What's stopping people from now? That's just leading into a gateway drug.
I think the gateway drug, I think, is I guess I don't think that's a good saying to have, because I think with the legalization of marijuana, I think that kids will notice the difference between marijuana and heroin. And nowadays, people, kids don't know the difference between marijuana and heroin and coke and different things like that. And there'll be more openness in the family and stuff like that. It's because it's not really comparable to those drugs and what they do to the body.
It's probably also a good thing to mention that, even if we are legalizing marijuana, we're certainly not legalizing heroin or cocaine. Children still know that, these must have something inherently different than marijuana, where they're still illegal and marijuana just became legal. People who smoke cigarettes don't think, well, now I should start smoking marijuana because, it's so similar. It's so, I know plenty of people who smoke cigarettes but don't smoke marijuana. I mean, are we really sure it's a gateway drug?
Well, I don't think someone would look at marijuana as like in the same way they look at a cigarette. You don't get high off a cigarette, but you do get a mind-altering effect from weed and from any other mind-altering drug, like a heavier substance that's more addictive. That's the one thing that you can smoke marijuana and may or may not become addicted depending on like how you look at it in the physical or mental sense. But if you do try cocaine one time, there is that very strong possibility that you'll have the desire to do it again. And if, like marijuana, you may not do it again, but with coke, you could, and then you're leading down a bad road that would have never happened if you hadn't been experienced to getting high in your life.
I mean, these are all just like maybes, though. Like maybe you'd do coke, maybe you'd want to do it again once you start it. Like maybe you could smoke once, and all that kind of stuff. Like nothing is positive. Like weed isn't definitely like a gateway drug. Like you're making the comparison between cigarettes and weed. Saying like if someone like smokes cigarettes, and if you could buy them in abundance, it'd become just like a cigarette. Well, I mean, if that's the case, you don't see everybody smoking cigarettes being like, oh, I'm tired of this cigarette, let's go get coke.
But you're not smoking a cigarette for the same effect that you would do coke for.
Some people do, though. I mean, some people do like get buzzes and like little cigarette highs off of cigarettes. Like it can alter your mind, smoking a cigarette.
But what about alcohol? Let's put alcohol out there. Alcohol is a mind-altering substance.
And
do people move from alcohol to cocaine?
I feel like there's a lot of like heavier drug use associated with like heavy partying with alcohol, not like just the occasional beer at like a bar with dinner, but like with heavy excessive partying, you do see a lot of like other drug substance use that you don't see with, like you don't see someone like doing cocaine and smoking a cig, but when you see someone drinking, I feel like that does lead to worse decisions, and there are
less responsible behaviors.
Right.
I mean, doesn't driving lead to driving to get weed? I mean, you can take that down the line as far as you want, like, yeah. are you going to take away the privilege to drive just because it's dangerous, or just because kids might pick up some weed or something like that?
Well, I mean, you can drive and go buy alcohol, but I don't really see the connection to where that would be a dangerous act if you're taking it back to your house. But
it's the driving or smoking while driving that you see
Right.
as the issue. Well, I want to touch on one word I heard you mention earlier, the word addiction. I want to ask the for side, can you be addicted to marijuana? Is marijuana an addictive drug, or is it simply a recreational drug? Is it simply something that, I mean, obviously anybody can put down anything, you know, I say that loosely, but does marijuana have addictive qualities?
I'd say physically, no. Like, your body will not typically crave marijuana. Like, you don't need it to, like, you know, like, keep yourself going. Marijuana is purely like a mental addiction, if you can even call it that, just like, you know, like pure like joy and like happiness and stuff. So, of course.
Is this country already fighting addiction though? I mean, we have Camel cigarettes and Marlboro cigarettes, and aren't we trying to get away from the addiction to big name, I don't want to say big name companies, it might be the wrong word for it, but aren't we trying to have a release from the addiction of this country? I mean, we have obesity, we have cigarettes, we have alcoholism. I mean, do we really need another addiction in this country?
I mean, yeah, at the same time, like with cigarettes and stuff like that, you actually need the nicotine from the cigarettes to like help out your body. Like, your body gets used to having that in it and it needs the nicotine. Whereas with weed, your body doesn't need anything. Like, you do it again purely because of the fact of like how it made you feel, and you want to do it again, but your body doesn't actually need it.
So, addiction or not, let's ask some people on the streets and find out what they have to say. We'll be back in a second.
I don't know, marijuana, it does kill brain cells. So, you know, we wouldn't have the smartest generation, I guess, but probably the happiest.
Other than excessive overuse, there's no long-term carcinogenic effects of marijuana, so I feel like it would definitely help to tax and regulate it. You could actually make money rather than spending it uselessly.
I think there's a lot of more benefits, if anything, as opposed to detriments, because marijuana really isn't all that bad for you, and it's pretty good for you, actually. So I think it'd be good to have it legalized.
If it's regulated, there'd be a lot less problems from it. Like, I think the main reason we run into problems is people leave them unregulated and then just want to do punishments instead of like looking at the real problem of it. But I think it would definitely help the economy, and I don't think there would be major social setbacks from it.
Unfortunately, it looks like we've run out of time for today. Gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for being on the show. I really appreciated hearing your opinions. I guess we'll have to look towards the future to see whether legalization actually works or not in this country. Join us next time on Tigers Talk Ethics.